There's a particular kind of tired that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from trying to do one simple thing, and feeling your mind push back. You stare at the email. You open the document. You look at the laundry. And instead of movement, there's this heavy, quiet resistance inside you. And almost immediately, a thought shows up, I'm so lazy. But what if that isn't laziness? What if it's overload? Welcome back to Mind Unfiltered. Today we're talking about something a lot of people carry in silence, the feeling that you're falling behind, not because you don't care, but because your brain feels full. Like it's running too many tabs at once. The hidden idea is simple, and it changes how you see yourself. What we often call laziness is sometimes a nervous system that's maxed out. A brain that has been asked to process too much, for too long, without enough recovery. And when that happens, motivation doesn't vanish because you're flawed. It vanishes because when the brain is overloaded, motivation and focus often become harder to access. You can think of your brain like a small workspace. It has a limited surface area for what it can hold at one time. Psychologists call part of this working memory, and it's basically the mental notepad you use to keep track of what you're doing right now. When life is simple, that notepad has room. You can plan dinner while answering a message. You can start a task without needing to hype yourself up for it. But when life gets noisy, that notepad fills up with invisible things. Unread emails. Half-finished decisions. Worries you haven't named. Conversations you're replaying. The pressure to keep up. The pressure to be okay. None of that looks like work from the outside. But your brain counts it as work. And your brain is not failing you. It's protecting itself. A lot of what we call self-control and motivation comes from the prefrontal cortex, the part behind your forehead that helps you focus, plan, and resist distractions. It's incredibly useful, and it's expensive. It burns energy quickly. So when you're overloaded, stressed, or constantly switching attention, the prefrontal cortex starts to lose power. Not permanently. Just in the way a phone goes into low-power mode. The brain starts prioritizing short-term relief over long-term goals. That's why, when you're mentally exhausted, you don't crave productivity. You crave quiet. You crave numbness. You crave anything that asks less of you. And that's where people get confused and ashamed. Because from the outside, it can look like you're choosing to procrastinate. But from the inside, it often feels like you can't initiate. Like there's no ignition. Let's make it real. You sit down to do something important. Maybe it's studying. Maybe it's work. Maybe it's even something you care about, like a personal project. You open your laptop, and within minutes you're checking messages, then scrolling, then watching something you don't even enjoy. Later you think, why did I do that? I had time. But the more accurate question is, what state was my brain in before I started? If your day has already been full of constant input, constant alerts, constant decisions, constant emotional monitoring, your brain is already overloaded. Starting a demanding task at that point doesn't feel like a neutral choice. It feels like adding weight to a muscle that's already shaking. This is where overstimulation matters. Your brain is not designed to take in endless information without consequence. Every notification, every headline, every short video, every quick switch from one topic to another creates a small tax on attention. Even if you don't notice it, your brain is repeatedly reorienting itself. And attention has a kind of afterimage. Researchers sometimes call it attentional residue. When you switch tasks quickly, part of your mind stays stuck on the last thing. So even when you sit down to focus, you're not fully there. You're carrying fragments of 10 other things. That can feel like brain fog. It can feel like restlessness. It can feel like you're allergic to your own to-do list. Then there's decision fatigue. A lot of people imagine decision-making as a neat, rational process. But in real life, your brain is constantly choosing what to respond to, what to ignore, what to wear, what to eat, how to word that message so it doesn't sound weird, whether you should speak up, whether you should be productive or take a break or push through. Each one seems small, but they add up. The more decisions you make, the harder it becomes to make the next one. Not because you're weak, but because your brain starts defaulting to the easiest option. The option that requires the least effort right now. And usually, that option is avoidance. Not because you don't care, but because your brain is trying to reduce load. Emotional stress adds another layer, and this one is easy to underestimate because it's quiet. When you're stressed, your brain starts scanning for threat. Not just physical threat, but social and emotional threat too. Your nervous system becomes more reactive. Your mind becomes more vigilant. That takes energy. Even if you're sitting still, your brain is working. And when stress is high, the brain shifts resources toward survival systems. The amygdala becomes more active, and the body releases stress hormones like cortisol. In small doses, cortisol helps you act. But when stress becomes chronic, it can make you feel drained and scattered. Sleep gets lighter. Your thoughts loop. Your patience shortens. Motivation becomes inconsistent. Overthinking is often part of this, and it's not just being in your head. It's your brain trying to solve a problem it doesn't feel safe leaving unsolved. So you replay conversations. You imagine worst-case scenarios. You plan and plan and plan, but nothing moves. Because planning feels safer than doing. Doing has consequences. Doing is visible. Doing can fail. And if your brain already feels overloaded, it will avoid anything that might add more emotional cost. Now, it's important to say this gently: laziness does exist, in the sense that sometimes we just don't want to do something, and we choose not to. But true laziness usually feels light. It feels like, I just don't feel like it, and you're at peace with the choice. Mental exhaustion feels different. Mental exhaustion feels like wanting to want to. It feels like caring, but having no traction. It often comes with guilt, anxiety, or self-disgust. It feels heavy. And it can make even enjoyable things feel like chores. A good way to notice the difference is to look at what happens when there's no pressure. If you're lazy, in the simple sense, you might still have energy for fun, curiosity, and presence. You might choose rest and actually feel rested. But when you're overloaded, even rest can feel restless. You scroll and you don't feel better. You watch and you don't feel refreshed. You take a break and you still feel behind. That's not laziness. That's a system that hasn't recovered. So what helps? Not a harsh schedule. Not self-punishment. Not pretending you can out-discipline a brain that's in low-power mode. Recovery starts with reducing the amount your brain is carrying, and then rebuilding trust in your ability to act. One of the simplest, most underrated steps is to lower input on purpose. Not forever. Not dramatically. Just enough to give your attention a chance to come back to itself. If your day begins with immediate messages, news, videos, and other people's thoughts, your brain never gets to start from zero. It starts from clutter. And then you wonder why you can't focus. Even a small buffer helps. A few minutes in the morning without your phone. A walk without earbuds. A meal where your mind isn't being fed content. These aren't productivity tricks. They're ways to let your nervous system downshift. Another step is to reduce open loops. Your brain hates unfinished business. Every unresolved task, even tiny ones, stays in the background like a low hum. You might not hear it directly, but it drains you. So instead of trying to do everything, pick one small loop to close. Send the one email. Put one item away. Make one appointment. Finish one tiny task completely. Completion sends a signal of safety to the brain. It tells your mind, something is handled. And that reduces cognitive load. Then there's the problem of starting. When you're overloaded, starting is often the hardest part because it demands a burst of executive function. So don't demand a burst. Make the start stupidly small. Not as a trick. As a way of respecting how the brain works. If a task feels impossible, your brain predicts pain and avoids it. But if the task is small enough that it doesn't trigger threat, you can bypass the resistance. Open the document and write one messy sentence. Put on your shoes and stand by the door. Set a 5-minute timer and only do 5 minutes. Often, the brain doesn't need motivation. It needs evidence that the task is survivable. Another recovery step is to stop confusing rest with escape. A lot of modern rest is actually more stimulation. It's more input. More noise. More comparison. More decisions. Real rest is what calms the nervous system. It can be quiet. It can be slow. It can feel boring at first, because your brain is used to constant novelty. Sleep is part of this, but so is stillness. So is movement that isn't performative. So is time where you're not being evaluated, even by yourself. And finally, a surprisingly powerful step, change the story you tell about what's happening. Because shame is not neutral. Shame is a stressor. If every day you call yourself lazy, your brain doesn't hear helpful criticism. It hears threat. It hears, I'm not safe to fail. And that keeps the nervous system activated, which keeps the prefrontal cortex offline, which makes follow-through harder. So instead of, I'm lazy, try something more accurate. My brain is overloaded right now. I'm in low-power mode. I need fewer inputs and a smaller next step. This isn't letting yourself off the hook. It's describing reality without attacking yourself. And when you describe reality accurately, you can respond to it. Over time, the goal isn't to become a machine. It's to become someone who can notice overload early. Someone who doesn't wait until everything breaks before resting. Someone who understands that motivation isn't a personality trait. It's a state. And states can change. If you're watching this and quietly recognizing yourself in it, let that land for a moment. Maybe you're not lazy. Maybe you've been trying to live in a world that never stops, with a brain that was never meant to process this much, this fast, this constantly. And maybe what you need isn't more pressure. Maybe you need less noise, fewer open loops, and one kind next step you can actually take. Not to prove anything. Just to come back to yourself. This is Mind Unfiltered. And if your mind feels heavy lately, I hope this gave you a different way to hold it. A softer explanation that still tells the truth. Because sometimes the most productive thing you can do is stop calling overload by the wrong name.